Yeah. Welcome, everybody. This is week 12 of Biblical Interpretations. I'm going to just jump right in. Um, so, as is tradition, my name is James. I'm a husband and a father, and I own an automotive business. I have a degree in Biblical and Theological Studies in Ancient Near Eastern History, although I'm not an expert in anything. So we started this class back in October to discuss a specific epistemological and hermeneutic framework I have developed over the course of my life. We spent the first 8 weeks building a foundational paradigm so that I could say the following sentence and hope it makes sense. The revelation of God is inherently contradictory. The biblical text describes a God defined beyond all knowledge that also wants to be known. The moment the knowledge of God transcends the boundary between what is not known to what is known, that God no longer is transcendent, but rather is continuous and becomes defined by what is known. And so this is the fundamental concern of the biblical text. How can humanity know God without God being entirely defined by all that is known? This is the fundamental issue we are seeking an answer to. Or another way of thinking about it is how God can be known as this without becoming known as something like this. So in weeks 7 through 9, we then discussed the setting of the biblical text. We established the concept of the land in between and how the flow of water determines the flow of the trade routes. We then mapped the major trade routes of the Levant and how its geographic regions determine where the trade routes are. Starting in week 9, we began mapping the journeys of the patriarchs, drawing attention to the repetition of where they go, the covenants they make, and the people they engage with. We started with Terah. We left from Ur, followed the Euphrates River, and stopped in Haran. Then we followed Terah's son Abram. Abram went from Haran to Shechem, where he builds an altar. Upon arriving in Canaan, there is immediately a famine, as we had established, because that is what the land does. Famining is what makes Canaan different than Egypt and Mesopotamia. So we followed Abram down to Egypt, down the ridge route, into the Negev, into Egypt, and then back to Beersheba. Upon returning, Abram has his son Isaac, the first person born in the region of Abraham's sojourning between the Negev, Beersheba, and Hebron. Isaac then, like his father, also experiences a famine and is explicitly told not to leave the land and not to go to Egypt, because that is the fulfillment of the promise that God made to Abram at Haran, that his descendants will inhabit the land. So Isaac is born in, lives in, and dies entirely in the land without ever leaving. Last week, we then went in depth into these bizarre passages in Genesis 12, Genesis 20, and Genesis 26, and how using a modern day hermeneutic concludes a very negative, very diminished meaning of the text that possibly misses the entire point of these passages. We discussed the different viewpoints of potential audience and authorial intent and perspectives. Your viewpoint, of my viewpoint, of the text's viewpoint, of Abram's viewpoint, of Pharaoh's viewpoint. I outlined how I believe these passages are building a framework of moral hierarchy. And what I love about these stories is, to me, by the end of Genesis 26, we see the epistemological expansion of Abimelech's moral framework. How by the end of these stories, he is textually ascribed as the opposite of Abraham's perspective of Pharaoh. We see the story of Abimelech ending where his right as the sovereign ruler would not override his social patriarchal duties or the requirements of marriage that he would owe Abraham, Isaac, Sarah, and Rebekah. And he certainly would not murder somebody's husband in order to do so. And so what we find is a framework of moral hierarchy ascribed in the text. A just person in power or with sovereign control like Abimelech would not use their sovereignty to override their patriarchal responsibilities, which would not override the constructs of marriage and adultery, which would not override murder and the preservation of life. So the text ascribes Pharaoh as a ruler who would murder someone in order to maintain their social patriarchal authority, in order to preserve the construct of marriage, and not commit adultery in order to preserve their sovereignty and position of power amongst their people, which is the very thing that would allow them to commit murder and get away with it. We then took this framework and we jumped forward 1,000 years. And we read the story of King David, the person who is supposed to be the complete culmination of all the generations prior to him, the conclusion of why Abraham left Haran, the redemption of Adam in Eden. And instead of David upholding the moral framework ascribed to Abimelech, we see David's actions being even worse than Pharaoh's. The text describes King David as a king who allows his power and sovereign right as king to allow him to not do what the king is supposed to do, and he diminishes the patriarchal responsibilities of himself, Uriah the Hittite, and Bathsheba. He completely sidesteps marriage constructs, forces adultery, and then commits murder to try and cover up the adultery. So in the end, David becomes like Pharaoh. And so to me, these stories are a perfect example of how if you take a hermeneutic approach that is very negative in its assumptions, your interpretation will conclude confusion, meaninglessness, and the opposite conclusion and the opposite moral framework of what the text might actually be trying to say. So now we can move forward in our journey. So please take out map number 2. And also, I forgot. We need. Do you have a map? You forgot it?
I came straight from work, so
Gotcha. Here's green and orange. And I don't know if we need yellow, but maybe you might. Orange. Let's see. Who's in green? Here's green. Here's the yellow here. I can't remember if we need yellow or not. But you got those. Do you want a map, or I think I've got an extra if you want one.
sure.
Okay. Let's see. So it's empty, and obviously there's a lot of information that we've gone over in prior classes. But hopefully, hopefully it'll be helpful to have. So.
I haven't wanted to walk out yet, so.
Well, that's good to know. So, okay, let's see. Okay, so here is a picture of our completed maps thus far. We have Abram sojourning in the Negev between Gerar, Beersheba, and Hebron. That's the green circle that we see. That's where Abram spends the majority of his life. We had read that Abram bought land outside of Hebron for the purposes of burying his wife Sarah. Abraham refuses to let Isaac leave Canaan, and so Abraham sends a servant to Haran to find a wife for his son Isaac. And thus we read in Genesis 24. So I want to say tonight is just a lot of reading the text. This portion of Genesis we are in is dense. That's the word for it. So, yeah. Anyways, okay. So Genesis, what did I say? Genesis 24. Here we go. So the Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, and who spoke to me and swore to me, to your offspring I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and ye shall take a wife for my son from there. But if the woman is not willing to follow you, then you will be free from this oath of mine. Only you must not take my son back there. So this is Abraham saying to his servant. So the servant of Abraham put his hand under the thigh of Abraham his master and swore to him concerning this matter. Then the servant took 10 of his master's camels and departed, taking all sorts of choice gifts from his master. And he arose and went to Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor, which is in Haran. And he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at the time of evening, the time when the women go out to draw water. And he said, O Lord, God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show steadfast love to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Let the young women to whom I shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink. And who shall say, drink, and I will water your camels. Let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I shall know that you have shown steadfast love to my master. Before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abram's brother, came out with her water jar on her shoulder. The young woman was very attractive in appearance, a maiden whom no man had known. She went down to the spring and filled her jar and came up. Then the servant ran to meet her and said, please give me a little water to drink from your jar. She said, drink, my lord. And she quickly let down her jar upon her hand and gave him a drink. When she had finished giving him a drink, she said, I will draw water for your camels also, until they have finished drinking. So she quickly emptied her jar into the trough and ran again to the well to draw water, and she drew for all his camels. The man gazed at her in silence to learn whether the Lord had prospered his journey or not. When the camels had finished drinking, the man took a gold ring weighing a half shekel and 2 bracelets for her arms, weighing 10 gold shekels, and said, please tell me whose daughter you are. Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night? And she said to him, I am the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, whom she bore to Nahor. She added, we have plenty of both straw and fodder, and room to spend the night. The man bowed his head and worshipped the Lord, and said, blessed be the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who has not forsaken his steadfast love and his faithfulness toward my master. As for me, the Lord has led me in the way to the house of my master's kinsmen. Then the young woman ran and told her mother's household about these things. Rebekah had a brother whose name was Laban. Yeah. Okay. So, a couple of things about this passage I want to draw attention to. One, Abraham's servant follows our green line. He reverses the route Abraham took to come to Canaan, and he makes his way back to Haran to find a wife for Isaac. We are not going to trace this route because we already have traced it. 2, when the servant arrives to Nahor, notice he stays outside of the city walls. 3, notice he comes to a well, and the well is also outside of the city walls. 4, notice when Rebekah is identified, she is identified all the way back to her relation to Abraham. Rebekah, who was born to Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, the brother of Abraham, which means Rebekah is Abraham's niece, which makes Isaac her cousin. Notice Rebekah has a brother named Laban, who would also be Isaac's cousin. This is because Abraham came from this place. So let's continue on. Laban ran out toward the man to the spring. As soon as he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms, and heard the words of Rebekah his sister. Thus the man spoke to me. He went to the man, and behold, he was standing by the camels at the spring. He said, Come in, O blessed of my Lord, why do you stand outside? For I have prepared the house and a place for the camels. So the man came to the house and unharnessed the camels, and gave straw and fodder to the camels, and there was water to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. Then food was set before him to eat. But he said, I will not eat until I have said what I have to say. He said, Speak on. So he said, I am Abraham's servant. The Lord has greatly blessed my master, and he has become great. He has given him flocks and herds, silver and gold, male servants and female servants, camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my master's wife, bore a son to my master when she was old. And to him he has given all that he has. My master made me swear, saying, You shall not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, in whose land I dwell. But you shall go to my father's house and to my clan, and take a wife for my son. I said to my master, Perhaps the women will not follow me. But he said to me, The Lord before whom I have walked will send his angel with you and prosper your way. You shall take a wife for my son from your clan and from my father's house. Then you shall be free from my oath when you come to my clan. And if they will not give her to you, you will be free from my oath. I came today to the spring and said, O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if now you are proposing or are prospering the way that I go, behold, I am standing by the spring of water. That the virgin who comes out to draw water, to whom I shall say, Please give me a little water from your jar to drink, and who will say to me, Drink, and I will draw for your camels also. Let her be the woman whom the Lord has appointed for your master's son. Before I had finished speaking in my heart, behold, Rebekah came out with her water jar on her shoulder, and she went down to the spring and drew water. I said to her, Please let me drink. She quickly let down her jar from her shoulder and said, Drink, and I will give your camels drink also. So I drank, and she gave the camels drink also. Then I asked her, Whose daughter are you? She said, The daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. So I put the ring on her nose and the bracelets on her arms. Then I bowed my head and worshipped the Lord, and blessed the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, who had led me by the right way to take the daughter of my master's kinsman for his son. Now then, if you are going to show steadfast love and faithfulness to my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, that I may turn to the right hand or to the left. Then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, The thing has come from the Lord. We cannot speak to you bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has spoken. When Abraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself to the earth before the Lord, and the servant brought out jewelry of silver and of gold and garments and gave them to Rebekah. He also gave to her brother and to her mother costly ornaments. And he and the men who were with him ate and drank, and they spent the night there. When they arose in the morning, he said, Send me away to my master. Her brother and her mother said, Let the young woman remain with us a while, at least 10 days. After that she may go. But he said to them, Do not delay me, since the Lord has prospered my way. Send me away that I may go to my master. They said, Let us call the young woman and ask her. And they called Rebekah and said to her, Will you go with this man? She said, I will go. So they sent away Rebekah, their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant and his men. And they blessed Rebekah and said to her, Our sister, may you become thousands of 10,000s, and may your offspring possess the gate of those who hate him. Then Rebekah and her young women arose and rode on the camels and followed the man. Thus the servant took Rebekah and went his way. Now Isaac had returned from Beer Lahai Roi and was dwelling in the Negev. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field toward evening. And he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, there were camels coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she dismounted from her camel and said to the servant, Who is that man walking in the field to meet us? The servant said, It is my master's. So she took her veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all the things that he had done. Then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah, his mother, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her. So Isaac was comforted in his mother's death. Okay. I know that was a lot. So why did we read this passage? So here we are again with our map. And we don't have anything to map because we've already mapped it. So again, the emphasis is on the repetition, how the generations repeat. This is the story of the preservation and the prosperity of a family. To me, it is fairly clear that Rebekah is the second generation equivalency to Sarah. The repetition is the success. So let's continue. We come to Genesis 25, verse 7. These are the days of the years of Abraham's life, 175 years. Abraham breathed his last and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years, and was gathered to his people. Isaac and Ishmael, his sons, buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar the Hittite, east of Mamre, the field that Abraham purchased from the Hittites. There Abraham was buried with Sarah his wife. After the death of Abraham, God blessed Isaac his son, and Isaac settled at Beer Lahai Roi. And so Abraham dies in the land, and he is buried in the same place as Sarah. Isaac is now the patriarch, and he proceeds to sojourn in the same region that Abraham sojourned. And so we have nothing to map, because if we mapped the location of Abraham's death and burial, and if we mapped where Isaac sojourns, we would just be tracing the same lines we have already drawn. So now we come to Genesis 25:19. These are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean of Padan Aram, the sister of Laban, the Aramean, to be his wife. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren. And the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah his wife conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, If it is thus, why is this happening to me? So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the older shall serve the younger. When her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy cloak. So they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, but Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And so now we're on to the 4th generation since Terah left Ur, and the 3rd generation since Abram left Haran. Now, when we get to Esau and Jacob, the next significant chunk of the text is all about Jacob and Esau. There's a lot we could get into. Too much. Could take years, honestly. So unfortunately, continue our journey, we have to cherry pick a few things in order to keep moving. So we already went over the next passage, Genesis 26, with the famine and Abimelech. We've gone over it actually twice now. So we'll skip that. And we come to Genesis 27 and Genesis 28. And I'm going to read these. Like I said, tonight, it's a lot of reading. Yeah. Okay, here we go. When Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau his older son and said to him, "My son." And he answered, "Here I am." He said, "Behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me, and prepare for me delicious food such as I love, and bring it to me so that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die." Now Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food, that I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats, so that I may prepare for them delicious food for your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies." But Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, "Behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be mocking him, and bring a curse upon myself and not a blessing." His mother said to him, "Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go bring them to me." So he went and took them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared delicious food such as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau, her oldest son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And the skins of the young goats she put on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. And she put the delicious food and the bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. So he went in to his father and said, "My father." And he said, "Here I am. Who are you, my son?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat my game, that your soul may bless me." But Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have found it so quickly, my son?" He answered, "Because the Lord your God granted me success." Then Isaac said to Jacob, "Please come near that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you are really my son Esau or not." So Jacob went near to Isaac his father, who felt him and said, "The voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau." And he did not recognize him because his hands were hairy, like his brother Esau's hand. So he blessed him. He said, "Are you really my son Esau?" He answered, "I am." Then he said, "Bring it near me that I may eat of my son's game and bless you." So he brought it near to him, and he ate. And he brought him wine, and he drank. Then his father Isaac said to him, "Come near and kiss me, my son." So he came near and kissed him, and Isaac smelled the smell of his garments and blessed him and said, "See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of grain and wine. Let peoples serve you and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be everyone who curses you, and blessed be everyone who blesses you." As soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, when Jacob had scarcely gone out from the presence of Isaac, his father, Esau, his brother, came in from his hunting. He also prepared delicious food, brought it to his father, and he said to his father, let my father arise and eat his son's game, that you may bless me." His father Isaac said to him, "Who are you?" He answered, "I am your son, your firstborn Esau." Then Isaac trembled very violently and said, "Who was it, then, that hunted game and brought it to me? And I ate it all before you came, and I have blessed him. Yes, and he shall be blessed." As soon as Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great, bitter cry, and said to his father, Bless me, even me also, O my father. But he said, Your brother came deceitfully, and he has taken away your blessing. Esau said, Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has cheated me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing. Then he said, Have you not reserved a blessing for me? Isaac answered and said to Esau, Behold, I have made him lord over you, and all his brothers I have given to him for servants. And with grain and wine I have sustained him. What then shall I do for you, my son? Esau said to his father, Have you but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. Then Isaac, his father, answered and said to him, Behold, away from the fatness of the earth shall your dwelling be, and away from the dew of heaven on high. By your sword you shall live, and you shall serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you shall break his yoke from your neck. Now Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, The days of mourning for my father are approaching, then I will kill my brother Jacob. But the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob her younger son and said to him, Behold, your brother Esau comforts himself about you by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to Laban, my brother in Haran, and stay with him a while, until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I what I think I messed this. I missed the one. That's just a lot of copy and pasting that goes into this. Why should I be bereft? I think was of you both in one day. Yeah, I'm in the right spot. Okay. Then Rebekah said to Isaac, I loathe my life because of the Hittite woman. If Jacob marries one of the Hittite women like these, one of the women of the land, what good will my life be to me? Okay, Genesis 28. Here we go. Then Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and directed him, You must not take a wife from the Canaanite women. Arise, go to Padan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and take as your wife from there one of the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and multiply you, that you may become a company of peoples. May he give the blessing of Abraham to you and to your offspring with you, that you may take possession of the land of your sojournings that God gave to Abraham. Thus Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Padan Aram, to Laban, the son of Bethuel, the Aramean, the brother of Rebekah, Jacob's and Esau's mother. Now Esau saw that Isaac had blessed Jacob and sent him away to Padan Aram to take a wife from there. And that, as he blessed him, he directed him, You must not take a wife from the Canaanite women. And that Jacob had obeyed his father and his mother and gone to Padan Aram. So when Esau saw that the Canaanite women did not please Isaac his father, Esau went to Ishmael and took as his wife, because the wives he had, besides the wives he had, Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, the sister of Nebaioth. Okay, so a couple of things to go over here. So one, Isaac says to Jacob the same thing Abraham says to Isaac. The only difference is Jacob had to leave Canaan because of Esau, whereas Isaac was not allowed to leave Canaan, and he didn't have a reason to leave Canaan. So Jacob follows in reverse the same journey Abraham and Rebekah took, going between Haran and Canaan. And again, we don't have anything to map because we would just be retracing what we already have done. 2, we then read this story of Esau, who also does the same thing, except instead of going to Haran, he goes to Ishmael. So I realize we skipped over the story of Ishmael. And I kind of quickly want to map that story. So we're going to do that here real quick. So we go all the way back to Genesis 16. And I'm going to read this quick. Here we go. So we're backtracking. This is about Sarah, Sarai, and Abram. So Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. She had a female Egyptian servant whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, "Behold now, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Go into my servant, it may be that I shall obtain children by her." And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. So after Abram had lived 10 years in the land of Canaan, Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian, her servant, and gave her to Abram, her husband, as a wife. And he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. And Sarai said to Abram, May the wrong done to me be on you. I gave my servant to you, to your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge between you and me." But Abram said to Sarai, "Behold, your servant is in your power. Do to her as you please." Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her. The angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from and where are you going?" She said, "I am fleeing from my mistress Sarai." The angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit to her." The angel of the Lord also said to her, "I will surely multiply your offspring, that they cannot be numbered for multitude." And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Behold, you are pregnant and shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has listened to your affliction. He shall be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him. And he shall dwell over against all his kinsmen." So she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her. "You are a God of seeing," for she said, "Truly here I have seen him who looks after me." Therefore the well was called Beer Lahai. It lies between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of his son, whom Hagar bore, Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael to Abram. Okay, so now we want to take an orange marker, and we're going to our maps, and we want to find Beersheba, which we've have done a lot with Beersheba. So find Beersheba, and there's a road that goes southwest out of Beersheba. Yep. Yeah. So Beersheba. So because you copied my map, you've actually already done this.
Oh, I did.
Yeah. You guys got Beersheba? Okay.
Well, where did you go from Beersheba?
Yep. That's what I haven't said it yet. So going southwest from Beersheba, you'll see Elusa, Ellusa. So keep following the road from Elusa and find Rehoboth. Well, it's okay. Keep going south on the road and find Nisana. And keep going south and you'll see Berain. Oh, I'm sorry. You keep going south and you'll find Karka. And then just to the right of Karka is Kadesh.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. You guys find it? Yeah, you got it.
This Ishmael.
Yep. So coming down here, right here is Kadesh. Yep. So we want to highlight highlight Kadesh like this. There's Kadesh. Okay, so somewhere between Beersheba and Kadesh is the spring that Hagar flees to, that is named Bir Lahai Roi. If you look just northeast of Kadesh, you'll see Mount Hor. That could be the general region where this well was. Okay, so now we go to Genesis 21, and we read the following. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had borne to Abraham, laughing. So she said to Abraham, cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, be not displeased because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you, for through Isaac shall your offspring be named. And I will make a nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder along with the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the child under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him a good way off, about the distance of a bow shot. For she said, let me not look on the death of the child. And as she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up the boy, and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him from the land of Egypt. Okay, so now we'll take an orange marker, and we're going to make a half circle around the region of Kadesh on our lower left corner. So it'll look like this. Probably like this. Okay. Yeah, that's perfect. Nice, you got it. Okay. So next we want to take the same orange marker, and we're going to draw a sweeping arrow from Beersheba down towards Kadesh like this. Okay. And so this is the area that Ishmael settles and sojourns. So now on our map, we have two orange arrows. These arrows on our map represent points of separation and divisions in this family's narrative. The first arrow we had drawn a few weeks ago was from the story of Abraham and Lot. Lot was the nephew of Abraham when Lot leaves Beersheba and settles across the Jordan River. The second orange arrow, is when Hagar flees Beersheba with Ishmael down to the wilderness of Paran. So now when we come back to Genesis 28, which we read earlier, we can understand what Jacob does and what Esau does. The green arrows now show Jacob retracing the route of Abraham and Rebekah back to Haran. The orange arrow is the same journey Ishmael took to flee Beersheba, and now the orange arrow also represents where Esau goes to find a wife as well from the Ishmaelites. And so again, the stories of these generations repeat. Also, this family has a lot of issues. So now we continue in Genesis 28. Jacob left Beersheba and went towards Haran. So I have a question. This is the test to see who has grasped the lessons of the past month. What route did Jacob take from Beersheba to Haran, do you think? Just think about it for now. So just think about it. I'm gonna keep reading. So Jacob left Beersheba and went toward Haran. And he came to a certain place and stayed there that night, because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of the place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place to sleep. And he dreamed, and behold, there was a ladder set up on the earth, and the top of it reached heaven. And behold, the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, and you shall spread abroad to the west, and to the east, and to the north, and to the south. And in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. And he was afraid and said, How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. So early in the morning, Jacob took the stone that he put under his head and set it up for a pillar and poured oil on the top of it. He called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of the city was Luz at first. Then Jacob made a vow, saying, If God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and I will give it and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. And this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. And of all that you give me, I will give a full tenth to you. So here we are again, looking at our maps. So if Jacob is in Beersheba and he leaves to go to Haran, he isn't going to go directly east like this. He's not going to do that. Why? Because there isn't any water going that way. Instead, he goes north from Beersheba up the ridge route. And he stops in Bethel. Why does he stop in Bethel? Who else in the midst of a journey between Haran and Beersheba stopped in Bethel? If you remember, when we first traced Abram's journey all the way back in Genesis 12, we see upon first entering Canaan, Abraham builds altars at Shechem and at Bethel. So again, if we trace Jacob's journey from Beersheba to Haran, we would just be retracing what we have already traced. So there isn't anything from this story to map. However, at this point, Bethel has been emphasized multiple times in the text. And so we should probably draw a circle around Bethel. Got it? Good job.
Yeah, it was up here, but it's not. What is it?
One thing I have joked about now for several weeks is, again, notice the complete lack of any emphasis or mention of Jerusalem. Correct, yes. Alrighty. So now here is our map after 3 generations in the land. So now we will proceed on to Genesis 29. And while I read this, I want you to think about how you've heard this before, how it reflects and mirrors the experiences of Abraham's servant when he had gone to Haran to find a wife for Isaac. How it reflects how Rebekah was introduced into the storyline. Genesis 29. Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it. For out of that well the flocks were watered. The stone on the well's mouth was large. When all the flocks were gathered there, the shepherds would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, "My brothers, where do you come from?" They said, "We are from Haran." And he said to them, "Do you know Laban, the story of Nahor, the son of Nahor?" They said, "We know him." He said to them, "Is it well with him?" They said, "It is well. And see, Rachel, his daughter, is coming with the sheep." He said, "Behold, it is still high day. It is not time for the livestock to be gathered together. Water the sheep and go pasture them." But they said, "We cannot until the flocks are gathered together and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep." While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Now as soon as Jacob saw Rachel, the son of Laban, his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob came near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman, that he was Rebekah's son. And she ran and told her father. As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Jacob told Laban all these things, and Laban said to him, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh," and he stayed with him a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to any other man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of the love he had for her. Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife that I may go into her, for my time is completed." So Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. But in the evening he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. Laban gave his female servant Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her servant. And in the morning, behold, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? Did I not serve with you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?" Laban said, it is not so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years. Jacob did so and completed her week. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his female servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her servant. So Jacob went in to Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and served Laban for another 7 years. When the Lord saw that Leah was hated, he opened her womb, but Rachel was barren. And Leah conceived and bore a son, and she called his name Reuben, for she said, because the Lord had looked upon my affliction, for now my husband will love me. She conceived again and bore a son, and she said, because the Lord has heard that I am hated, he has given me this son also. And she called his name Simeon. Again she conceived and bore a son, and said, now this time my husband will be attached to me, because I have borne him 3 sons. Therefore his name was called Levi. And she conceived again and bore a son, and said, this time I will praise the Lord. Therefore she called his name Judah. Then she ceased bearing. So a couple of thoughts on this passage. 1, Jacob arrives outside of Haran to a well, just like Abram's servant did. 2, where Rebekah gives water to Abram's servant's camels, in this generation it is Jacob who gives water to Rachel's sheep. 3, whereas when Abram's servants find Rebekah, he wants to leave in haste. In this instance, Jacob stays for a month. And then Jacob and Laban come to an agreement that Jacob will stay for a total of 14 years and marries Leah and Rachel. Why? Because as we read in Genesis 27, it was Rebekah who told Jacob to flee to Haran until the fury of Esau had subsided. Okay. So we will end this here for now, but I want to kind of tie all this together. So going all the way back to Eden, we see generation after generation, stories where the ideal of God's intention is interrupted or even broadsided by the unexpected. At every fork in the road, we see people whose attempts at upholding their cultural, religious, and heritage expectations make decisions that continue to give reason for each generation to have to leave the land. This is not God's intent. God's intent is to be in the land. With the exception of Isaac, in order to preserve the fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham, everyone else eventually comes and goes. So the text builds this tension, this pressure, this expression of the ideal of being in the land with an acceptance of the realities of the complexities of life and the raw level of instinct and action that it takes in order to just survive. So with that, we're done for tonight. So next week, we'll finish the story of Jacob, and then we go on to the 5th generation with the story of Joseph. And then from there, things get really, really interesting. Looking at the schedule overall, next week I will be here. And yeah, I'm expecting to go over Joseph. The week after that, it'll be online. Once we get to Moses, I think it's like February. It'll probably be February 7th, best case. Maybe that week after. When we get to Moses and we get to Sinai, I really, really hope that everybody can be here in person, because it's like the culmination of everything. So we're going to leave it at that for now, and we will yet again get to this picture at some point. But this we discuss as part of Sinai. So if that helps give you an idea, we're still several weeks out from this. So Joseph's next, and then we'll go from there. So anyways, does anyone have any questions on anything from tonight? I know it's a lot of reading. My advice, just read. during the week, if you can, go back and reread these chapters in Genesis. My hope would be, not that you're asking, but I'm telling you, my hope would be that if you can familiarize yourself with the map, to the point when you're reading the text, you pick up on the repetition of place names. That's really the goal of the mapping, is to understand, because again, like I'm trying to express how these things repeat. And there's a certain amount of, once you internalize the geography, you can just read it and it makes sense. It starts to stand out to you. So anyways, that's all I got for now. So thank you everybody for coming.